Welcome to Generations at Work, where our goal is to build bridges, not walls, between the different generations. Today, we're going to dive into the world of a Chick-fil-A owner operator who has redefined leadership in the quick service industry. I'm your host, Susan Davis, executive facilitator and coach with Maxwell Leadership. And with me, our generational expert, Dr. Tim Elmore. Dr. Tim Elmore is the speaker and author of over 35 different books, international author and presenter. And we are so excited to have your expertise here. Dr. Elmore, I welcome and I would love for you to introduce our guest today.
It will be my honor. Zach Thomas, thank you for joining us today, buddy.
Yes, sir. Good to be here.
Zach and I have known each other for lots of years, probably, I'm guessing over 20, maybe.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I think it was Andy that first introduced us and, so forth. But I know Zach as a Chick-fil-A owner operator, and he's been doing that for years and years. That will probably come up, how long he's been doing that. But Zach, I think you and I met even before you were an owner operator.
We did.
But I distinctly remember you taking me up to New York, right on the Hudson River, where we went to West Point, where you graduated from back in when? What was your graduation year?
1999.
Okay, there you go. Yep. And Zach, this is totally off record, but would you take 60 seconds while we were up there? You wanted to see if you still had it in you. Do you mind telling that story?
Yeah. So we were in the Arvin gym, and there's this thing called the Indoor Obstacle Course Test, the IOCT. And not all the obstacles were laid out, but it was the shelf, which was one of the hardest things to do. And, we were standing around talking to some young cadets, and here I am, I was in my 40s at the time. And and I was like, yeah, let's see if I can do it. I just like ripped my shirt off and and ran and jumped. And I mounted the shelf. And I mean, there's a lot of cadets that like spend 4 years trying to get on that shelf. And so so yeah, it was fun to, I guess, kind of reminisce and see that I still had a little bit in me. So
That's right, and I got it on film, so that may come out one day.
yes,
Who
sir.
knows? Okay, Zach, the reason we have you here is because you and I have talked for years about how you are really leading multiple generations in that restaurant
Yes, sir.
that you run. And by the way, we all love Chick-fil-A. The
Yes, we
quality
do.
is just incredible. And you know that. That's why you signed up. But you told me a story some years ago that I thought might help us segue into a great conversation about multiple generational workplaces and intergenerational, even better than multi. Multi means we got a bunch there. Inter means we're starting to work together really well.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us the story about how you had that gentleman that was over 70 and you had some young team members that weren't quite on the same page. Would you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, and you may have to remind me of some of the details. I have a story that even happened today, which I'm happy to share with someone that's over 70.
Okay.
But this particular gentleman was double retired. He had retired from the Marine Corps as well as
Yep.
General Motors Corporation, and
Yes.
and so this was his third job. He was just trying to keep himself, busy, pretty very active. Gentleman, and he was just incredibly frustrated with the younger generation and their what he perceived to be their work ethic. And so on many occasions he would come to me and just frustrated about how I needed to fire this person and that person, and that. And I told him, I said, his name was Mr. Don. I said, Mr. Don, like, you can't run this restaurant by yourself. Like, you need other people to help you. And so, like, how can you motivate and inspire these young folks? How can you help them grow and learn from the things that that you're strong at? Like, he never, not once ever, was late to work.
Yep.
He always opened the store. I mean, he worked for me for like 3.5, 4 years, and all the way up until COVID. And then he got a little concerned during COVID and kind of pulled out. But he was always there. He was always on time. And I said, so, how can you reframe your mindset and just not give up on this generation, and
Yeah.
and how can you help them incorporate some of the things that you've learned and what's important about, showing up on time and showing up to work and working hard, and so I think, he never fully embraced Gen Z, and like, but I think he was able to meet them closer to the middle with some
Yeah.
coaching and conversations. And so, yeah, I'll tell you a funny one that happened this morning. Literally, I have a 71-year-old lady. We call her Miss Annie, and she's an older Black lady. She is a favorite of many, but she
Yeah.
is just really like ornery most days. Like, she's just always like almost, real grouchy in the mornings, especially. And she's our
Yeah.
biscuit
Yeah.
maker. And so she was about to get off. She was on her break, and I came in. It was like just before lunch, and I said, "Good morning, Miss Annie. How are you doing today?" And she just looked at me and she said, "I'm gonna choke those young girls up front." First thing she said to me today. And I said, "Now, Miss Annie," I said, "I know you're not really going to choke them. So tell me what happened. What are you going to do?" She's like, "Well, they just leave stuff laying everywhere, and they're all just so lazy."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, you know the deal, Miss Annie." I was like, "I'll help you, but you just give them a hard time, and then they'll give you a hard
Yes.
time back, and then y'all will, and so that
Working
that's
out. Yeah.
literally one of the ways that we've helped this whole dynamic is that they do like jovial conversations, like giving each other a hard time back and forth, and she'll just call them lazy, and then they'll call her
Yeah.
grouchy, and
Yeah.
it's fun, but they get along. So that's a very
Well,
relevant new story. So
that's right. Very, very recent. Well, what I love about that is you're able to laugh with each other and
mhm.
Yeah.
poke a little bit, but at least it's out there. We're not hiding, or it's not an elephant in the room. But
Yeah.
going back to the original story, here's what I remember you saying. You had Mr. Don, and there were one or two younger team members that were maybe equally frustrated with
Mhm.
his grumpy, hard-nosed, old school ways. And I think, Zach, you told me, I don't want to misquote you, but at one point you sat down, maybe after a shift, and said, you got at one of the tables, and you said, let's talk about this. And you had young and old beginning to share
Mhm.
back and forth. Understanding emerged between why I think this way and why you think. All behavior has a reason, right?
Mhm.
For young and old. So I just remember you. It wasn't like a peace thing. It was just we got to talk to each other, not about each other.
Mhm.
And I was just impressed with that when that happened. And I'm thinking that's the way we need to go is get together and talk. So
I think a lot of people probably have misconception. You only have teenagers, right, working in your Chick-fil-A franchise. So you don't. You have a lot of older generation, Gen X and boomers. So what have you found key connecting with those Gen Xers who would be 40 to 50, and then the boomers who are 60 to 70, especially with connecting and leading with those different generations?
Yeah. In fact, just before this call, just looking a few minutes ago and looking at my breakdown, I have about anywhere between 90 and 100 team members. Kind of fluctuates a little bit, and about 15% of my staff are boomers, and about
yeah,
20% of my staff are Xers, and then the balance of that is millennials and Gen Z,
Gen Z.
and so it is a quite diverse workplace in terms of generationally, and one of the things that I've always thought about with leadership, and this is a lot of times when I'm coaching new people that are moving into leadership, I tell them that it's the hardest one of the hardest things about leadership is realizing that it's not cookie cutter, and that you can't
Mhm.
just apply your stamp on every single person that you lead. And so if you come to the table with ginger, we have ninja bread cookies that we make at Christmas, and my team knows that, and it's like, you come to the table with your ninja bread cookie cutter, you can't just apply that same cookie cutter to everybody. So that's
Yeah.
what, where emotional intelligence and all that stuff comes in. It's like you've got to think
Mhm.
differently when it comes to every single generation, but also every single individual.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
doubt about it. All right. So Susan just asked about the Gen Zers and millennials. Or excuse me, the boomers and the Xers. I want to now talk about those under 40.
Yep.
So the oldest of the millennial generation would be in their early 40s.
Hmm.
So they're in midlife. But you go down to the 30s and the 20s, and they would be a different batch of mindsets than Mr. Don. So, what kinds of observations have you made that help you connect with the younger generation? And Zach, I know your brain. You're a West Point guy, you're a work ethic guy, you have a farm that you work. So you would be, can I say old school and not take it as that's a compliment.
Yeah,
But you've got some, go ahead.
I say I don't take offense to that at all. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I didn't think so. So just share some insights that you picked up on managing younger team members that may not get it right away, but you know it's in them. They've got talent. What do you do to kind of connect with them and bring them along?
Yeah. So one point that I wanted to mention as it relates to those olders, I do, to your point, connect with them a little better. I was raised by my grandparents, so my parents were part of the picture, but they were working all the time, and so I spent a lot
Yeah,
of
yeah,
time with my grandparents, and they were the greatest generation. So I was raised like a boomer, and I
yeah,
really
yeah,
connect with boomers, and so I don't have any problem with them. I'm a Gen Xer, and so I have some Gen X tendencies as well. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, with that younger generation, I've learned to try to just really call out their strengths, and help them cultivate their strengths in such a way that the older generation can see, like, hey, you might be really good at this particular thing, but you need to see that this person has these strengths and these qualities, and you might could learn from that, and help
Yeah.
you grow and become a better, more well-rounded person. I think, like everything in life, like I share this pendulum idea, and there's always the far right and the far left, and usually it's somewhere in the middle that
Yeah.
we find ourselves being our best selves. And so if they can
Yes.
move a little bit closer to the middle, and they can move a little bit closer to the middle, that's the goal, is helping them
Yeah.
find some sort of common and middle ground.
Good. Good.
Very good. You mentioned emotional intelligence earlier, and I feel like we're going to hear a story here. So,
What if your book had the expert backing it deserves? Join best-selling author Tim Elmore and a team of publishing pros for their next book in a weekend event, happening February 27th through March 1st, 2026, in Alpharetta, Georgia. You'll get expert coaching, insider tools, access to publishers and editors, and a shot to pitch your book. One participant will even land a book deal with Maxwell Leadership Publishing. Apply now at abookinAweekend.com. Your story is worth it.
but I'm sure you've had some challenges over the years that have required you to really embody that emotional intelligence with the employees at your restaurant. And feel free to use a story. We love those. But how have you managed that in using EQ and how you lead?
Well, I'd never even heard of the term EQ until I heard Dr. Elmore use it one day, and I think some of that comes natural for me, but I, just maybe one story, and this relates back to like a boomer and a millennial conversation, and I remember it was just in the spur of the moment. I'm sitting there looking out the window of the restaurant, and I'm trying to just find something to help them connect. And I saw a stop sign. It was my stop sign that is right at the edge of the parking lot, right before you come out of the drive-through. And I said, "You see that stop sign right there?" They both turned around and looked, and yeah. And I said, "Well, what if you, the boomer, was standing on this side of it, and then the millennial was standing on the other side of it, and I ask you to describe what you see." And one of you is going to say that I see a red octagon with white letters that spells stop. And the other is going to say I see a aluminum octagon with no words on it. And if I didn't let you move and you stood in the same spot all day, you would argue all day as to what you see. And the reality is, I'm here to tell you that you're both right. And you just see it from a different perspective. And so that was just like literally in the spur of the moment. Like, I mean, I guess you would call that emotional intelligence, but like, you know, just having this ability to try to help people connect in such a way to see things from a different perspective.
That's so good. So good.
It is good. It is good.
What do you think, Zach, are some of the lessons that come to mind when you look back on your leading a restaurant that might be applicable to any leader? People skills that you picked up, people skills that you've tried to teach to team members and managers and shift leaders. What would you say?
Well, you know, I've already shared several things. You know, I think the whole cookie cutter piece is really important. I also think that, you know, and I'm getting into like, you know, maybe a little bit of systems and processes and things like that. But one of the big things that we do is we just want to make sure that we're really clear on our roles and responsibilities, and having like role clarity with your position and what you're responsible for, and then helping other people understand what, you know, okay, this is your role and this is your responsibility. And then we have this as people move into leadership positions, we have what we call the four Ds, and just helping them define leadership in that way of like doer, delegator, developer, definer. And so, and this is just something I came up with my friend Bing Oliver several years ago as we were kind of working together on some stuff, and just really help. Okay, right now you're being a doer, and that's fine, but at some point you've got to delegate this, and then the person that's the doer understands that, oh, they're just delegating to me. In fact, quick story on that. I had brand new leader. She was smiling from ear to ear. She came up to me today after lunch. She was like, "I just led my first shift." Her name's Lexi. I was like, "Awesome, great job. How'd you do?" And she was like, "I think I did okay." And so then I looked over at Wendy, one of my seasoned leaders and trainers. I was like, "How'd she do?" She's like, "She did really good." You know, but I told her like she's just a little too nice sometimes when asking people to do something. She's like, you know, "Hey, I need you to pretty please, you know, go outside and do IPOS." And she's like, "You know what? You kind of just need to say, hey, like, you're going outside to do IPOS in 5 minutes. Get ready." You know, and so, so anyway, just, you know, that sort of thing. So understanding like the doer, the delegator, and then developing people. I won't get into all those details because that may be outside the scope of what we're talking about. But I think, but that is just some of the people skills that I've learned, that just clearly defining roles and responsibilities in certain areas of the business, whether they be you know, a leader all the way down to a team member.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's so good. You know, I think what you're saying too is that delicate balance between, right, the relationship and the accountability piece, and teaching that generation how to handle that. You know, when we think about the 2, 3, 4, 5 different generations that you have there in the workplace, what do you do to bring those team members together, connect, and build those relationships?
You know, it's really hard to do that because we are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. every single day except Sunday. And we want our team members to have rest. We want them to have time away from work. And so we only schedule a few events a year on a Sunday, but we do have, family-oriented events. We let them bring their whole family. In fact, we're getting ready. We're in the process of planning where they'll come out to my farm this summer, and it's just like a farm day where they just, hang out on the farm, and we've got 3 lakes, and they fish and ride the
That's neat.
tractor, and we just have a great day. And so I think when you can take them outside of the work context
Yeah.
and help them, connect on a personal level outside of work, that really helps. In fact, one other thing that I've done in the past when we've had some pretty significant conflict between 2 leaders, I literally went and bought them a gift card for an expensive steakhouse restaurant, and I said, "Look, here's dinner for the 2 of you. We have to go together, and
I love that.
you have to have some conversation outside of work." And so
I love
just
this.
and they came back like fine, like perfectly fine
Yeah.
after having a $40 steak. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Zach, I love this story because I think I work with a lot of leaders and a lot of people, they just want to get to business. Let's
yeah.
get it
Yeah.
done. Let's get the numbers. It's results, 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 which I get. I totally get that. But taking time to build the relationship, the experiences build the connection in the relationship. And I hear all the time, so I don't want the listeners to miss this. Creating these moments, these relationships are key to
Mhm.
successful work environments.
It's
I
always
would agree.
it's
Go ahead,
always a
Zach.
tension. Tim and I have talked about this
Yeah.
over the years. I mean, there's always this tension between results and relationships. And
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A talks about the power of the and. It's not either or, it's
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
results
Yeah.
and relationships.
Yeah. That's true. And I
I
feel
love
like
it.
you do it as well as anybody, Zach. You just seem to intuitively know what I need to do right now, whether it's a stop sign or a steak dinner or get those 2 squabbling people, age 71 and 21, together, poking fun at each other and realizing, I guess we're going to get through this day after all. That's really good. And it does boil down, Susan, to your point, to relationships and forming connections, even if they're not BFF after the shift. At least there's been laughter that lubricates all the friction. So
I,
Zach, before we sign off, I want to give you a chance. You're talking to leaders that are usually managing multiple generations in a workplace, maybe not a quick service restaurant, but some place where there's a whole bunch of people with different ages. What advice would you give them if you just had a few minutes on doing that well?
Well, I think that for me, the biggest thing that has happened over the years is just really understanding that my role as a leader is a lot like parenting. And
Mm.
I have 7 children, as you know. My oldest
Yeah.
daughter will turn 21 in November, and I have a
Wow.
young son that turned 6 yesterday. And so I've got, a big gap between them, 5 girls and 2 boys. And I'll tell a quick story about my son. When he was about 2 years old, and I talk about it in my book, which Tim actually gracefully endorsed for me. But I tell this story about how my son, he's about 2, he was trying to stick a paper clip in an electrical outlet. And rather than going over to my son and saying, "Oh, son, I love you so much, and let me explain electrical theory to you and how, electric current running through your body could stop your heart." And no, I didn't do that.
That's
I went over, I yanked the paperclip out of his hand, I slapped his hand pretty good. And at this stage in his journey, like, all he needed to know is that if he sticks another paperclip in an outlet, Daddy's going to slap his hand. And
yeah.
and so that is that early on, leadership. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
discipline, it's accountability, it's all of those things. And so I think in business we think like, oh, I've either got to lead that way or I've got to give, just complete freedom and autonomy or whatever. But no, it's an evolution. And so what we do
Yeah.
is we're really strong up front. You hear school teachers talk about this, like at the beginning of the year, you got to be really tough, right? So with every new team member, like we come in really strong up front with, our point system and our disciplinary system, and we help them understand, like, and the thing that I use with the point system, and I say the point of the point system is not to point you out, but to keep you on point till you see the point. Now let me unpack that. It's the purpose of this disciplinary system is not to get you fired, but to keep you on point until you see the bigger picture, until you see what we're actually trying to do here. And so if my relationship with my son is the same at 18 years old as it was when he was 2, and all I'm doing is slapping his hand when he does something wrong, then I've done something wrong. And so the evolution of my leadership has to go from, like, he has to understand that discipline was in love, and that over time he's going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and because he knows that I love and care about him. And I say all the time, like, a team member motivated by love is not the same as a team member motivated by fear, manipulation, guilt, shame, and all those things. And so that only leads to temporary behavior modification. But a team member motivated by love or the knowledge that someone cares about them, that's transforming. That's life-changing.
Absolutely.
So
Zach, you couldn't have said it any better. This is awesome.
So good, so good. Zach, thank you for being with us today on Generations at Work. For the listeners out there, if you're interested in learning more about how to lead different generations in the workplace, perhaps you need a workshop or coaching for your teams. You want to raise that leadership lid on your organization. You can visit maxwellleadership.com/generations at work. You can also download a free Generations at Work playbook. Again, leadership.com/generations at work. Thanks for being with us today, Zach. Thank you. Dr. Elmore, as always, we'll see you on the next podcast.